good evening, good night, depending upon where you are, where you're listening around the globe. So we started this series on the personal development area, and I have a special guest today called Dr. Jen Allanson, who really inspired me during my journey. I met Jen in November 2013, 27th and 29th of November precisely at Manchester Conference Centre. And she organized a course on leadership in action, and it was one of the courses that really inspired me. It gave me a real insight and increased my self-awareness. And because of her inspirational talks at the course and her persona, her personality, I decided to bring her on as one of the guests to kick off this series. And one of the things that I really like about Jen, and something that really inspires me, is that she's a larger-than-life character. And what makes her a champion, and the reason that I've called her on, is that she's an epitome of a risk-taker. Often you see Jen doing her wonderful stuff in the seminars, and you can see that she's outside her comfort zone, but despite that, she still does it. And the other thing that I really like about Jen is that she's honest and she's a genuine person. She's courageous, and ultimately she's a go-giver. And that's one of the key reasons why I called her on as one of our first guests. And Jen, I would just like to ask you to share your journey and your life experiences, and why did you choose social entrepreneurship, and how did you end up doing what you're doing? And the key thing is, how did passion play a role in your life?
Hi, Adil, and anybody who's listening, wherever you're listening. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I feel slightly embarrassed by your kind words. It's very, very generous of you. Thank you. What do you want me to start with? So my journey, potted history of, I was not an academic child. I left school early without very many qualifications and just went out into the world of work because that was what the people around me did. My dad was a bricklayer, my mum was a cleaner and a housewife. All of the people that I knew went out and worked, so I went out and got work, and it seemed fairly easy to do, even without qualifications. And the knack seemed to be to turn up, be cheerful, and when people ask you to do things, say, yes, I can do that, and then go and find out how to do it. And that served me really well, so I left school at 15 and started work around that age. By the time I hit my early 20s, I realised that my long-term working life was likely to be very samey.
Okay.
I knew how to make a living. I could move around from job to job, and this was in the 80s. When if you speak to people who talk about the 80s, they were difficult. They were difficult times here, but I never had any difficulty finding work. So I realised that I was always going to be able to work, but I was going to struggle to be challenged by the kinds of work that I could pick up without any qualifications. So I was open to something. One of the things that caused me to shift direction was whilst I was searching for the thing that I might need to do next, I took up with a Buddhist meditation group. They were a Mayahana Buddhist meditation group. And I used to go to their talks and their meditation sessions, and it seemed to open a little window in my mind. It just opened my mind up to other things. And one of the things that got in one day, I was watching a popular science program on the television, and it was they were interviewing a guy called Yaron Lanier, who is a very early virtual reality pioneer. And I thought, hang on, what's this? And he said, in the future, we'd all live in computers. And I was like, this sounds fantastic. How do I go and find out? How do I go and do that? So this was 1990-ish, somewhere around then. And I'd never really used a computer, just done some word processing. So the following day I went to the went to the library, pulled out the university handbook, looked to find out which universities were doing work in virtual reality, phoned one of them, spoke to somebody who told me what I needed to do, which was to get a degree and a PhD. And so that's what I did. And that started me off on a journey that I'm still on now, actually. So that's what I did. I studied computer science, became a virtual reality expert. 8 years after the phone call, I was in Texas presenting my first academic paper, took up an academic job, started to go down the academic route, but during that time got involved in postgraduate training and realised that that's where my passion really lied. really lay, was actually being of service to other people. So doing what I do in service of other people's aspirations. And that's pretty much where I am today. I do that in all sorts of different contexts, but that's how we met a deal when I was running the Leadership in Action course in Manchester.
That's really exciting. I mean, the thing is, I was really fortunate enough to attend a lot of courses during my time whilst I was doing my PhD, and I have to say, hands down, Leadership in Action was one of the most inspirational courses that I...
Well, that's very, very kind.
And so what are you up to these days, Jen? Is there any latest causes or projects or goals that you're working towards?
Yeah, I've got a few things on the go. So I'm involved because of the nature of my work. So the training business that I run is effectively allows me to work part-time but earn a decent working, sort of a decent living wage. So I'm involved in a couple of things. So I do a day a week for a charity, a local homeless charity. I've been there today and that's been really lovely. So I started with them. They opened a new shop in a part of Liverpool to earn money for the charity. And I managed to get involved in that before the shop even opened. So I've been involved in that for over a year and helped them to get the shop open. So I went to work with the manageress when I was first there, because I was the first volunteer there. She was nervous about being able to get the shop open for Christmas. That was really lovely. So I got to use some of the skills that I've brought with me from my training background to encourage and champion her and set little goals for us, so that it meant that not last Christmas but the Christmas before, we were up and running by Christmas, which wasn't expected by the charity or by the manageress. So that was really brilliant. So I've been involved in that and that's ongoing. The other thing I'm doing at the moment is I'm starting a new art studio. So another thing that I'm involved in and have been since, I can't remember not being involved in the arts. I have a huge love of and passion for the arts, and I'm a practitioner. Is I'm just starting a new art studio. So the studio I'm part of is moving, breaking up, and so rather than going to find another established studio, I'm now going to start a new one, which is quite exciting. So and that's moved on today. So I got final confirmation today that we'll take over the lease in July. That's brilliant.
Oh, that's really good news. That's really good news. So how do you tend to sort of inspire or engage the community using this art?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've deliberately chosen somewhere that isn't in the established art area of Liverpool. Okay. So there are two main areas of Liverpool where the art scene is booming, and my new premises is in neither of them. What it is, it's in an old school in Toxteth, Liverpool 8, and it's all of the other small organisations in there are all small charities that work within the community. And what I'd like to do is to set up an art studio and to offer what skills-based training, perhaps, for the community. I don't know. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna take all my equipment and some lovely people that I've met, and we'll see what happens. So I don't want to go with a set agenda that I'm going to do this there. I want to go join the community and find out what could be done, and then I'll do that.
That's a great idea, actually. That's an amazing way of approaching things. And I've realized that, actually. So based on my studies of high performers and great champions, although the irony is this, that although even the slogan for the Academy of Champions is developing high performing personalities, it's performance. I've realized that is actually a byproduct of experiencing life. So the top performers actually experience much more than they.
Yes, I think.
And so it's great to know that you don't have a set plan, and you're actually going to go and experience and absorb the information and then come up with a plan.
I think it's very easy, especially if you come from one field where you have some established expertise, to think, well, I can go and be an expert in another field. Yeah. And it's a reasonable assumption, but it can then stand in the way of you discovering what that new field is really all about. So I like, the reason I've chopped and changed so much over the years, to be fair, Adil, is I like to be in that circumstance again where I have beginner's mind. So I like to be the outsider. I like to be the person who doesn't know what's going on. And I like to ask questions, build alliances, discover, do research, play with people, their games in their environment, and then learn from them. So it's very much my style to go in and kind of probe that environment and see what I could add, if anything at all.
Oh, that's amazing, because that's one of the things I really admired about you, especially at the Leadership in Action course, because it was obvious that you were outside your comfort zone, but the thing is, everyone loved that you
No,
were doing it, and this is one of the key qualities that I want to share with the listeners, that it's not about being the most confident and being, a go-getter sort of figure. It's about you stepping out of your zone, and that's the only way to grow. In my time when I was doing my PhD and I was delivering social entrepreneurship seminars, this is a key thing that I mentioned, that it's not about making mistakes. It's about making it. So, for example, myself, I speak for myself. I'm probably one of the PhDs that made the most mistakes, but the key thing was to learn from that and then grow, because without making mistakes, you won't learn. And if you don't learn, you won't grow. So that's something I really admired about you, and it looks like there's some sort of reoccurring theme in your personality, that you like to step out of your comfort zone, but then you're someone that seeks to constantly grow. Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I'm happiest in slight dis-ease. So I'm happiest when I'm uncertain and anxious a little. I like a little bit of anxiety and a bit of nerves. It keeps me sharp and on the edge. And often what happens, and has happened throughout my working life, so I'm nearly 50 now, so it's like 35 years of work. And over all of that time, when I feel comfortable,
Yeah.
then I know I've got to start to move, because otherwise I become nervous of getting too set in my ways and then maybe losing my confidence. Sometimes I've met lots of people over the years who've stayed in one thing, and the world kind of moves on around them, and they go, I can't do anything else, and they become nervous of change. Or whereas I feel like the way to thrive in the world that we have now, which changes so quickly, is to preempt the change. If you're wired that way, it's not for everybody, but for me, I need to preempt the change and move when it feels like the right time to move, rather than a year or two after I've had the first sense that it was time to move on.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. And so this week, I've been posting a lot about passion, and one of the key quotes that I wrote in my article last week was a quote from Rumi, and I remember speaking to you last week, and we discussed Rumi and some of his work. And one of the key quotes that I came across Rumi that's really resonated with me was, Rumi said that each person has had a work put in his heart, so he's been made for some work,
Yeah.
sort of purpose, some sort of vocation. And the theme of this month is finding your vocation. And then he said that the desire for that work has been put in each person's heart. Now, when you look at the word desire, it originates from to give birth to something. And
Mm-hmm.
the word passion, I've been mentioning in my posts, is it's a sort of flame inside of you. So it's like, and another quote of Rumi, basically saying that to set your life on fire and see
Mm-hmm.
also set out your flames. And essentially, yeah, what I want to try to get you to, Jen, if you want to reflect on your life and sort of configure, is what do you feel is that flame inside you? What was that passion that drove you to overcome obstacles and hurdles? Because I'm sure you had many.
Yep.
As social entrepreneurs, I don't think I've come across any entrepreneur or social entrepreneur that hasn't had obstacles and hurdles. But what is that flame inside of you that you'd say has kept you going?
Thanks, dear. I did have a think about this today whilst I was at work, because I was trying to work out what the reoccurring theme has been throughout the seemingly random journey that I've taken. Even to me, sometimes it looks very random. I think one of the things that I mentioned the Mayahana Buddhist group a long time ago, and I never continued with that. But I think what that lit in me is an absolute and deep love for humanity at large.
Okay.
And if I'm honest, I think that the passion, the thing that burns inside me, is to make my life useful, to feel that the day that I draw my last breath,
Mm-hmm.
that I'll be able to go, I spent my time wisely in service of humanity. Now, obviously, I can't get around the whole of humanity. I'm just one small person, but that's kind of my driving force. So anytime I'm looking out a project, or anytime something catches my eye, or captures my heart, or captures my imagination, the things that last and turn into things, I can resolve with that that desire to be of service to humanity, even if it's just a small section of it. But if I can, if that's, I get that feeling that this is going to make a contribution to somebody else's life, then that lights the fire in me. That will make me stay up late or prioritize what I'm doing over other things, put the hours in, suffer. I don't know, the things that one needs to do in order to make progress in an area. That if I sense that what I'm doing, the time that I'm investing is going to be of service to others somehow, then I would say that that's my passion.
Yeah.
That's the thing that lights the fire in me, is to be useful.
Okay, cool. You left out a really nice note. But before I get into my sort of background and passion and a bit of history about myself, one question regarding your projects that we discussed earlier on. How can people get involved in the work that you're doing?
That's a really good question. And again, I had to think about this today as well. How can people get involved? With the charity and artwork, it's not very easy for me to say, really.
I guess early stages, isn't it?
Yeah, the early stages. Yeah, I don't know. It's a simple and unhelpful answer. At this stage, I don't know, because it's at such an early stage. I don't know what's going to be required. But maybe if we speak again in 12 months' time, when things are underway, then I'll need lots of help.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to get in touch with people who'd like to help. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. So okay, so I'm just going to I've prepared some slides. I had some extra time today, so to go through them. So what's passion for me? Well, the Academy of Champions, essentially, what I try to do is create a syllabus or curriculum that revolves around history, science, philosophy, and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, elements that I realize is I like to take things to the roots of the word. And we often see on social media, and often you'll hear celebrities all use the word passion, and people say follow your passion, and it's an overused term. And I don't think people actually realize what the word passion actually means. I mean, although people say it in a positive sense, if you look at the roots and origins of the word passion, I mean, so from Professor Google, I got this passion and definition. One is that it's strong and barely controllable emotion, but the second one, the suffering and death of Jesus, and synonyms such as crucifixion, pain, suffering, agony, martyrdom. Now, these are more aligned with the actual origin. So if you look at the origins, it's from the word to suffer. And so from a historical perspective and from a philosophical and spiritual perspective, when I actually reflected and I came across this fact, I tried to, and with most principles that I'll be sharing in the Academy of Champions, I'm going to try to backtest them throughout history and try to get an overall picture of what words mean and what messages people are giving. And from a historical, philosophical, and spiritual perspective, what I realized from being raised up from Islamic background and, a lot of different terminologies we're taught, the closest word from Arabic that I could match with the word passion linguistically was actually a shock horror. It was the word jihad. So we're often taught, it means to strive and to struggle. And when I actually looked into the word passion and I dissected it, and I was shocked to find the link between that. So not only was it linked to a prophet that we believe in, Jesus, but also the fact that you can actually look at the prophethood, like all the way from Adam, and you can look throughout history at various champions and high performing personalities. You can say that as well. And what you realize is that they all suffered. They all suffered for a cause. And so what I realized was that passion actually means to strive and struggle to sacrifice for something of a lower nature, for something of a higher nature. And this was one of my key findings. And even in the Urdu language, which is my mother tongue, the word, and something that I posted yesterday actually, was janoon, which is passion. So you got jihad in Arabic, you got janoon in Urdu, and then in English you've got passion, and then you've got the Latin there. So there's an imagery that forms with passion. Passion isn't just a high energetic state. Passion is about you overcoming obstacles and hurdles. It's a fuel inside of you that drives a person. So that's what I come up with. And in my last webinar last month, I shared a story with those that attended. In 2012, once I'd finished my degree in chemical engineering with business management, and I was really fortunate and blessed to be awarded President Doctoral Scholarship, offered a PhD, which I ended up pursuing, but soon later I had a phone call from BSF, the largest chemical company in my sector, and they had identified me as one of the best upcoming talents in Europe, which was again overwhelming. But despite all this interest and getting a letter from Dame Nancy Rothwell from University of Manchester, the reality was I was depressed. Not only was I depressed, I was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, and like I mentioned last webinar, that the public sector, after a year's worth of investigation, the public sector gave up on me. Went to Harley Street, the private sector had given up on me. Both of them had done all the tests, and they said that they didn't know what's wrong with me. GP said that it's likely that I'll suffer for the rest of my life because he knew somebody else that had been, and it still is. Well, I don't know whether he solved the problem, but he said that as far as he knew, for 20 years he'd been suffering. And then again, Harley Street, the doctors had given up on me, but then despite all of that, I'd managed to figure out myself what was wrong and restore my health within 2 months. Now, that sort of response, I didn't realize what I'd done because it happened so quickly, my recovery, and it took me a long time to actually reflect back and think what I'd actually done and achieved. And I was really fortunate to visit my high school and my college last week, and I actually, after reflecting for a long time, I realized that the key characteristics that I'd obtained were actually at a very early age. So one of the key things that people often discuss is, are champions made or are they born? So this is something I really reflected on as well. Was it something that was in my DNA, this response of bouncing back when the world says no, you turn around and say yes, something that's in my champion speech on the homepage. So was this response in my genes, or was this something that I could look back and highlight key events in my life and say, you know what, these contributed to the mindset that I had? And long story short, in 2008, some similar things happened. So in 2008, I just finished my A-levels. And you mentioned your background, Jen, and my background basically is my mother's a civil engineer, my father's an orthopedic surgeon. Now, when it came to me deciding what course to pursue, my mom said to me, son, whatever you do, become a doctor, so follow your father's footsteps. My father said to me, son, whatever you do, don't do medicine. So this was the dilemma I was in. I was confused again. I was in a state of confusion. I didn't know what to do. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'll listen to my mom and I'll apply to the medicine schools, so medical schools. So I applied to, I think it was Liverpool, Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester. And lo and behold, I got all rejections, straight rejections. So that was a moment in my life where I really took a step back and I actually started doing some soul searching and thinking, what is it that I really want to do? What do I want to sort of manifest in this world? What do I want to achieve? And what really gets my juices flowing, so to speak? And there's certain events. So actually, that period of reflection helped me make the decision to do a course, pursue the course, which I ended up doing chemical engineering with business management. That's what I decided to do. So I didn't decide to do medicine. I took up chemical engineering, business management. But what was my rationale behind this? And this is where I like to take you further back into my life. And this is a key thing that me in particular will be emphasizing throughout the Academy of Champions course, is that one of the key aspects is reflection. A lot of you, and lots of things that defined you will be, you'll be able to configure out through reflecting. So when I went back to my college, high school, which was Oldham Union Grammar, you know, I'm really blessed to have gone there. I mean, some of the champions, Professor Brian Cox went there, Nada Manua, and some amazing personalities. But what actually defined me was three main experiences in my life. One was the Young Enterprise Award that I received in 2007. Now, in my family, no one has, embarked on the journey of entrepreneurship, so I'm seen as the outsider. So I'm going against my natural disposition. And Young Enterprise was an experience which again defined me. So upon reflection, so Young Enterprise scheme involved setting up a company called it was called Tiamo, but I wasn't the managing director. I was actually the ICT director, and the story behind the Young Enterprise venture was basically with a month to go towards the area finals. The company was in a state where it was about to be liquidated. There was no team ethics, morale, and it was a dead duck. And I was made the managing director. And so my job was to change the team direction and instill some passion inside of them. And we ended up winning 3 out of 5 trophies in the area final. Again, so that was one instance when the going got tough. I sort of got going. So that was one example. But another example was I was given an award for hockey, captain the hockey team. And often when I would go to interviews, not only for universities, even after that, people often ask you what is your most successful achievement. And I would say it was losing 8-2 as the captain of the hockey team. And so why I would say that is because when I was made the captain of the hockey team, I inherited a team that had never really played hockey before. Only one other person was on the previous team, and the rest of them had never held a hockey stick before. So it was a new team. Not only that, we were playing Cheadle-Hulme. Cheadle-Hulme are known to produce players who go on and play for the national team. Not only that, we'd never scored against them as far as I was made aware. So that was an achievement, scoring 2 goals past them. But the actual match itself was very interesting actually for me from a sporting point of view, because we started off on extremely high tempo, and up to close to full time, the score was 5-2, and I had given it my absolute all. So the person in the picture, Mr. Justin there, he was the coach. I said to him, can you substitute me off and put a defender on so we can basically hold the lead, and it'll be the best score that we've ever managed against Cheadle-Hulme. He agreed, and he took me off, and in extra time they managed to score 3 goals, and the score was 8-2. But when the final whistle went, the principal of Cheadle-Hulme came, and he was asking the players who I was. So for me, again, it was a lifelong learning experience, because I realized at an early age that it wasn't about winning or losing, but it was essentially about giving it your all. And that's what really resonated with you, Jen, when you mentioned that when you do things for humanity, although you realize that you might not be able to change the world, it's your contribution. So no, I really appreciate you for sharing what makes you tick, and football as well. So the other irony was this. So I scored so my last contribution at Grammar was the staff versus prefect game. And again, I scored the opening goal, so high pressure game, and I wasn't on the football team, but I scored the goal, opening goal, but then we went on to lose 11-2. So, but again, that formed my memories. But these memories, I realized that these set the precedence to what I was going on to achieve later on in my life. So what I realized, and I realize now when I'm sort of sharing with people now, is that you're actually defined very early on in your life, and the key thing is to reflect. What are the patterns that are emerging? Reflect on your greatest achievements, and I can share from my personal experience anyway that they very much are aligned to what your bigger purpose in life is going to be. And speaking to my principal a couple of days ago, I met at an event, and he said, Adil, you were such a big introvert, so the last person we'd imagine would be you to go on to become an entrepreneur. But again, it's the passion that drives you. It's the passion that helps you overcome the obstacles and hurdles, even if it's outside your comfort zone. Because with time, when you're outside your comfort zone also expands.
It does.
So yeah, so that's the key thing. And again, the other thing that I wanted to share. So when I started my so-called dream degree at the time, well, I thought it was my dream degree, chemical engineering business management. The reality was it wasn't going too well. I didn't enjoy it because they were teaching the fundamentals of chemical engineering, which was some fluid flowing in a pipe. And I was like, great stuff, and some sort of heat transfer and some sort of heat exchanges. But the reality was, after 2 years, I'd made a pretty much informed decision that I was going to drop the course. I spoke to my tutor at the time, a guy called Peter Senior, and he said to me, "Deal, if you're not enjoying it, then it's best that you drop the course and go pursue what you really want. Go back and try applying for medicine again." But here's the key thing: sometimes the flame inside of you ignites later on. So, for example, even though I went to Manchester Medicine School and I spoke to admin staff there, and there was a chance for me to join later on, the thing was, when I was in the process of actually withdrawing from the course, I was doing a module on sustainability, and when I was doing that module on sustainability, it actually ignited a spark in me that was sort of missing, and that's the original reason why I actually chose to do the course. So it was renewable energy, sort of helping developed countries have energy independence. So that spark lit, and after that spark lit, I realized that I didn't want to do medicine. I'd found what I was looking for all along. And then that basically followed on to my research, which was in biofuel. Again, something that I could use, that knowledge I could use to give back to people not as fortunate as me, or people in developing countries, use that knowledge to benefit to humanity, like you said. And again, that made me even happier. And so when the PhD offer came in, even though I had the opportunity to go into industry, I decided not to and decided to do my PhD. And the crazy thing was this, Jen, that although I was going through some of the toughest times, so in terms of my health in 2012, I was still happy. That was the crazy thing. Even though I was going visiting all these doctors, and I was going and being constantly having the door shut on me, saying that we don't know what's wrong with you, you're going to be stuck like this, I still had the energy inside of me to keep going. And this is something that I realized. So one of the key things is, and this is the beauty of finding your vocation, if you really find what you're passionate about, the energy will come to you. And so one of my key analysis on after studying all these champions has been that 80% of what you need to fulfill your purpose is actually already inside of you. It's in your DNA. The key thing to becoming a good, so unlocking the 80%, is self-awareness. And that's something that Jen's course, Leadership in Action, enabled me to do. It gave me a greater insight. These things that I'm sharing with you, actually, these were things that were a byproduct of the Leadership in Action course, because I was really fortunate enough to be paired with a fantastic lady called Terry Atwood. I think that's the second name.
It is.
Terry. So my memory's not too bad. But Terry was identifying patterns in my performance during these activities that Jen had organized. And when I was extrapolating those patterns that she applied to my life, I was like, that's so true. And then when we were sharing them in our two groups, people were sort of fascinated on how I was able to sort of, apply what we were learning real time on my life. The key thing is, so one is self-awareness that you can get, but the other key thing is reflection. Jen, one of the things that you mentioned at the Leadership in Action course, and I think is imperative according to me, but it's the thing about journaling.
Okay.
So when did you start journaling?
I probably started about the same time that I had my epiphany. I think it all happened around the same time, which probably was when I was around 20. And I guess it was part of my searching for what is my life for, what should I be doing. I started to just take notes. I was doing research, I was writing, and literally I was just searching around for answers, recording dreams, writing reflections on things that had happened during the day. I should say that I've never done this consistently. I'm a sporadic journaler. But when I do it, it always shows me something that I need to see. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of it. It doesn't really matter how you do it or how often you do it, so long as sometimes you spend some time just with yourself writing out what's going on for you. Because not just journaling, you'll know yourself, Adil, as a researcher, when you try and articulate something, your true understanding of it manifests. So when you try and write down, even for yourself, well, why did that meeting go like that? Or how come my response to that circumstance was so strong? Or why didn't I get that job? Any of those things. In the sitting down to try and write out what happened, the understanding will make itself apparent to you.
Yeah, that's great advice. Actually, Jen, you also mentioned something else that's stuck with me, but not in its entirety. You mentioned something along the lines of that people often read about other people's lives, but what about your life? And I think you made the connection between journaling.
I can't quite remember what I would have said on the day, to be fair, I do.
No, I still remember.
But
But yeah,
I guess my general gist may well have been, and it's certainly something that I deeply believe in,
yeah,
is that everybody's life has significance, and your life, as you're demonstrating right now, going through this process and sharing it with other people, has things to teach others. You know, when we lived in small communities, before we were literate and before we had the written word, we told stories about what the ancestors did.
yeah,
And through hearing about their lives, we learned how to live our lives. Now we're in this wonderful, rich environment where we get the chance to access ancestors. You can't see me doing little quotation marks in the air, but I am, from all over the world in all sorts of different life stages, people we can learn from in the same way that people can learn from you, but they can only do that if the story of your life is recorded somehow. And this is a lovely way for you to begin to go through that process in a way that makes it publicly available so that other people can learn from you and be inspired by you, which is a brilliant thing to do. I'm delighted that you're doing this.
yeah. No, thanks. And that's, by the way, that's why I was able to get the dates. The 27th and 29th November was when we met because of the. So, a lot of people that will be, a lot of guests will be surprised about me and getting exact dates when I actually met them. The reason is because I've been journaling for a while. So,
Oh, brilliant.
that's
Brilliant.
but yeah,
Have you been doing that since you were in school, Adil?
sorry.
Have you been journaling since you were young?
No, so my journaling thing, so it's very interesting because one of the main inspirations in my life was actually my late granddad, Professor Laudin Sheikh, who's a professor of mechanical engineering.
Mm.
He was someone that, he was a well, he had crazy amounts of, self-discipline. He had a very strict regime, and before going to sleep every day, he would journal, um, to the point that the day he passed away, he was journaling. So the pen fell from his hand, and
Wow.
he literally just fell on the floor. And,
Oh, wow. Incredible.
yeah, it's so, and because of he was by far the most effective person I'd met, because
Mhm.
and I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of professors, but he was a guy that really focused on the people and impact, um,
Lovely.
rather than publication like count. And so he didn't have the highest publication count, but his funeral sort of spoke for itself. It was just ram-packed with people, but it was what he'd actually contributed to people in humanity and society. And
Fantastic.
that people were, a lot of people were shedding tears that we didn't even know that he'd done things for. Uh,
Oh, lovely.
so the thing is, that's where I picked up journaling from. But I actually started journaling in 2012. So I didn't actually start prior to the episode, after when my health started declining,
Mhm.
because I was actually doing it as a researcher. So I was actually trying to work out trends, what I was eating, and how that was affecting me emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Mhm.
And that is actually one of the secrets on how I restored my health in 2 months, because I'd made something. I'm actually going to share the pattern of journaling that I'd ended up devising in the end. But it enabled me to I'd go reflect back and come up with a way where I could configure which foods and what was the key sort of aspects to my declining health. So yeah, so it wasn't all the way back in school or college, and no, it was in 2012.
Fantastic. But it was prompted by a need that you identified in order to keep track of something, your researcher mind kicking in. Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But before that, yeah, I didn't consider it. But anyway, I'll get back to what my key findings were when I sat down. So I sat down and analyzed a lot of inspirational people that I'd met and people that I'd studied. So I like to read a lot of autobiographies, of some great personalities. And again, so 80% what I realized they already had in them. It was something that they obtained through self-awareness, and that was obtained through reflection. But the key thing is this, and this is one thing what I really admire about Jen and other people, is that it's a 20% that defines whether you go on to become a great. And that 20% will go against your DNA. So for example, myself and Jen, we are researchers, and people in general that are researchers tend to be not always more introverted. But the thing is, you can't knock the capacity for acquiring knowledge, understanding the knowledge, and sharing that knowledge through different mediums. But the key thing about sharing knowledge actually comes through communication, the art of communication. And that is something that researchers in general struggle with. So for introverts, and the irony is the actual reward lies in sharing information. There's no real reward in accumulating knowledge and information. I mean, what are you going to be, encyclopedia? So the key thing is disseminating that knowledge, and that comes through self-discipline. And that's the key thing that I've realized. So there'll be, after you've unlocked through self-awareness and heavy reflection your actual natural core strengths, and once you become this person who's really good at what they do, to become a great, you'll find that you'll have to do something that goes against your natural disposition, against your DNA. And that often for introverts is public speaking. But that comes through self-discipline, so knowing what you need to do and giving it more energy, more attention. Not only that, it comes through essentially just practice and experiencing. But again, the fundamental blocks of the self-discipline is self-awareness. What do I need in order to make me great? If you can't configure what your, not weaknesses, but what you need exactly to take you to another level, you won't know exactly what thing you need to create as habits and routines to get you that self-discipline to elevate you to your goals. And that again comes through self-awareness. And again, self-awareness comes through reflection. So the bottom line is reflect.
If I can just add something here, something that I've obviously experienced myself, which has also influenced the direction that I've taken, certainly in terms of my training, and I do some coaching as well, is actually reflection is really great in the presence of a really good listener. So self-reflection with yourself, by yourself, journaling is absolutely fabulous. I make art and other ways, use other means to self-reflect, but actually speaking to somebody and again articulating to them what's going on for you without them questioning that, without them challenging that, but simply with them being there listening to you and maybe occasionally reflecting back what they're hearing is so powerful. And from what I heard you say before, this was the role that Terry played for you on the Leadership in Action course, as I'm sure you played the same role back for her. I know that she found it a very powerful experience as well.
Yeah. I mean, no, you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah, so listening, you know what, you've brought Rumi back into my mind. So, yeah, so the great quote about Rumi linking to nightingales and peacocks. So it essentially said, spend less time with nightingales and peacocks, and essentially aspire to be a leopard or a falcon. And it was essentially this. It was, nightingales like to do a lot of talking, so they've got a great voice. Peacocks like to boast, they like to show off. But the thing is, leopards and falcons, they are also beautiful creatures in their own right. Not only that, both of them can make a noise like the nightingale. But the thing is, they choose silence and action to be their main way of life. So no, you've hit the nail on the head. So silence and listening to people is a key skill for top performers and champions, and all people that go on to achieve great things. So no, that's a really good point, Jen. Really appreciate it.
And it's a great thing that we can do for each other to help each other to develop and unlock our natural potential, is to ask great questions of people that we meet, even strangers on the street, and just listen to their answers and make no judgment and try and make no assessment, and certainly don't give them any advice. Just let them talk, and you see people light up and they talk about themselves and things that they've overcome, and they'll always tell you what they need to speak about, and you can have a really meaningful interaction with anybody you meet at any time and have a profound impact in that moment and then never see them again. It's a really powerful thing that it's a capability that we all have.
Yeah, another thing actually from, I was going to go on to the next slide on science, but from a historical and philosophical perspective, I met, there's this presenter at one of the Manchester Enterprise conferences, Alistair MacDonald, great guy, and he mentioned something which I sort of expanded on later on, but he said that, God's given us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should do things, so divine wisdom dictates that we should do things in proportionality, so we should listen twice as much as we speak.
But it's really difficult. It's very difficult to do. We're not trained to do that. We're trained to be the person who puts their hand up and says, sir, I know the answer. We're not rewarded for being good listeners. We're rewarded for presenting and being outwardly, articulate. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so I basically expanded on that, and I usually share with people that you've been given 4 limbs of action, so 2 arms and 2 legs, and you've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should do things in proportionality, so let your actions do the talking, and then listen twice as much as you speak. But that's just something I'll share later on in one of the modules.
Right.
Lastly, science. What does science tell us about, this thing about passion, motivation, and various things? So I was really blessed and fortunate enough on Saturday to be a volunteer at this fundraiser. And the fundraiser was for a hospital to help people in Pakistan that have illnesses with their eyes, so people that go blind and cataract operations. But the key thing that I wanted to share was this. The person who's the head of the charity, I think he's probably in his 70s now, his energy levels were just immense. I mean, they raised $500,000 in, I think, 2 hours. With the current economic financial situation. But the key thing what I realized was that compared to, so the person who was doing the fundraiser was the cousin of my granddad's best friend. And my granddad's best friend is a guy who, he's got a background, an engineer's background. And he basically, after retirement, and you often find these, so I'm seeing this more and more, people that retired end up quite isolated. And not only do they end up isolated, the negative thoughts kick in, they become insecure, and, it leads to lots of mental health illnesses. And I was comparing the general trend of people that get into, after retirement compared to this immense personality that I was witnessing before my eyes on Saturday. A person who was like he was like a 20-year-old boy, and it was with so much passion in him, so much drive in him. And this is something that I realized after studying some top performers closely, is that the energy inside of you is a function of your dreams and desires and goals and visions. Because why should the universe, or if you believe in a God, whatever your belief systems are, why should that give you the energy to fulfill something if you've not got anything to drive towards? And so what I've realized is this, that clarity, focus, growth, confidence, truth, and action, that is what essentially passion gives you. Once you know what you're passionate about, you will see your energy levels, grow with time. If you don't have a passion, what I've realized is if you've not set any goals in life to contribute, like Jen mentioned, to humanity, or have a cause to not fight for, but give yourself towards. And this is one of the modules. So this is module 6, the art of serving. In this day and age, we have very few go-getters, but even fewer than go-getters, we have lesser go-givers. And that's one of the things that we're missing. We're missing go-givers. But what you realize is those people that don't have a passion, don't have this drive, and haven't set any goals in life, and literally they're just going along with time catches up. And what I've realized is that in the long term, I've realized that people become hopeless and despondent. And that is one of the key issues. So on the Academy of Champions website, the second page that you'll see will be 21st century challenges. And on that page, you'll see one of the 3 of the key challenges are linked to mental health illnesses. And so For people that suffer from mental health illnesses, not only that, people that, regardless of what age you are, one of the key things that studies are showing now is that to get yourself out of a state of despondency and hopelessness and depression, and if you are severely depressed, obviously you need medications, those that are on them. But one of the key things that even Brendan Burchard mentions is setting yourself a mission and a vision in life. Do something, give, contribute, because this is one thing that I've known, I've witnessed in my life, that those people that have these goals and visions and contribute back, they're rewarded by having high energy levels, and it's the passion and purpose that enables them to get that energy and drive. So, and this is a bit of science that I wanted to give after all the philosophy. And again, how will you get that? Self-awareness and reflection. So again, listening, journaling is a key thing. But anyway, in 2 weeks' time, I'm planning to do an interactive webinar where it's called Do What You Love or Love What You Do. There are no other ways in life. So for the passionate ones anyway. And this will be for members only, so if you've signed up, if you subscribe to the mailing list, you'll get a link. If you've not subscribed and you want to attend, just subscribe, go onto the Academy of Champions and add your first name and email address. What will I be sharing in the interactive session? Things that I've learned that have helped me configure my key core strengths. So what were the key tools and techniques that I came across? I'll be sharing them. Work out what type of learner you are. This is very important. You know, a lot of people who finish the GCSE or A-level are getting in touch with me, or actually people that are graduating from university, and asking me, what should I do? I don't want to, I've had people come up to me and say, we don't want to go into industry, we don't want to go to academia, we want to do what you're doing, social entrepreneurship. What you must realize is that I'm doing what I'm doing after reflecting on my life and all the obstacles and hills that I've had to cross. And what I'm sharing with you now is what you guys need to do if you want to sort of emulate myself, is that you also need to get that level of self-awareness. Social entrepreneurship is actually, Jen, I want your opinion. Would you recommend social entrepreneurship to, well, how easy is it and how challenging have you found it? Let's put it that way.
It feels like it was just a natural progression as I've aged and become more experienced in my own life. It seemed like a natural progression for me to move beyond serving myself into finding different ways to serve other people. So I think it's doable for anybody. But I do agree with you that don't rush into it. Spend some time finding out who you are. Try some things, fail at them. Fail catastrophically at them, pick yourself up, try some other things, get some skills, build some wisdom, and then see where you can add value. So I would recommend it to absolutely anybody, but I would say do some self-discovery first, and then you'll find out enough about yourself to see where you'll be most of service to others, certainly for the first step.
Yeah, that's great. So basic learner types are important because for myself, I'm a visual learner. So a lot of the time in a university, I would spend times, so visual learners tend to be slower learners because the knowledge is actually transferred through text. And so we have to spend the time visualizing that and decoding it in a way that we can learn. But if you are also a visual learner, you probably find the same frustration as I found when I was, in the education system. But to configure that early on, whether that's in your GCSEs or A-levels or whatever you're doing, working out at an early age what type of learner you are, I think that pays dividend in the long term, because in hindsight, if I would have known, so I actually realized this after my master's, so when I started my PhD, and it changed the way I was getting results. So one example is 3 months into my PhD, people were asking me how I'd achieved more in 3 months than they'd achieved in 10 years prior to I'd come along in the research area. And the reason was because I'd realized that I was doing what was aligned with me. I was a visual learner. So visual learners, although it'll take you longer to get to it from A to B, once you're at point B, point C is just around the corner. So again, learning that, what type of learner you are, and optimizing yourself to learn accordingly, I think that's important. Again, there are different ways to learn as well. So again, like Jen mentioned, listening is also a way to learn. You don't have to always be active and doing things. Just listening to people is a good way to learn. But there are different ways, and there's certain ways that match certain personalities, which I'll share. Best way to grow based on what stage in life you're at. So this is the thing. A lot of people were asking me, Deal, you've set up the Academy of Champions. What's your target market? And my answer was, I don't have a target market. This is something I discussed with Jen actually, I think last week. The thing is, it's my belief that you can change whenever you have that yearning for change. Whenever you feel like it's time for you to grow, it's time for you to contribute, it's time for you to matter, you can change. And the key thing is there are certain elements that can help you achieve that. For example, in my last webinar on My Life Equals My Choice question mark, I discussed that. Up to the age of 26, again, going back to my experience, my entrepreneurship experience started at the age of 16. And so because a lot of people didn't know about what I'd done in college and my younger days, so to speak, they didn't know. And so it was actually a shock to a lot of people that I'm setting up enterprises, whereas I had already known and I had the experience and exposure at an early age. But if you haven't had any experience or exposure in social entrepreneurship, it's means to do what Jen sort of mentioned, go experiment and make mistakes and you will learn. But the thing is also, Jen, I don't know from your experience, a lot of people mention, and which is very true, is that as life goes on and you have more responsibility, personal responsibility, you get married, you have children, you're less, well, you don't want to take as many risks.
That makes sense, and I guess every individual needs to make those personal life choices for themselves. For me, I decided that I didn't want to have a family, but would rather carry on taking risks and seeing what I could contribute. But that was my choice. But you're absolutely right. It's the right thing for people when they settle down and take on responsibilities for others.
Yeah.
That they become risk averse, and it's natural, but it doesn't mean that they can't then continue to strive to do something which burns inside them, whilst they'll just choose to do it in a way that doesn't put their family at imminent risk of destitution, hopefully.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Again, so personality type is important. Creating your own personal roadmap to success. This is a key technique that I'll share with you guys. It's very important. I think everyone needs to. So I've actually helped some top surgeons who've come to me in acute depression. I've used this to help them snap out of acute depression. So it's actually quite powerful, but it's so straightforward. This is the irony, but it's something I really want to share with people. And exercise to increase self-awareness and clarity. So I'll be sharing whatever I've learned in my life's journey with you guys in 2 weeks' time. Again, so I want to thank Jen before I finish. Jen, there's 2 questions, and I really want to thank you for coming. Last 2 questions.
Thank you. It's very generous of you to ask. I really appreciate it.
Yes, so the last 2 questions before we just wrap up, Jen. Do you have any advice for the youth, the future generation, upcoming champions?
For all of them, for every young person everywhere at all times through the future of history. That's pretty difficult. What I could do is I could pass on the advice that I was given by the people who inspired me the most, which were my mum and dad, who both said in their own different ways, nobody is better than you. My dad always said, don't tug your forelock to anybody. So never think that somebody's better than you because of their qualifications, their age or their background. You're as good as anybody else. And the other thing that my mum said all the time that I'm still experimenting with now, and she's largely right, is you can do anything that you choose to do if you set your mind to it and put the hours in. So my advice to young folk is be not limited by other people's mental model of you or parental aspirations for you, unless it's for you to be free and to experiment and explore and enjoy your life.
So yeah, so I think Steve Jobs called that dogma, if I'm not incorrect. So yeah, getting tied down by other people's opinions. And the last thing is, Jen, because we're almost approaching the end, is do you have any advice for myself and the Academy of Champions?
It's early days. I'm loving what you're doing. So my advice is carry on. So don't lose your passion for it. Don't be distracted by other things. People will offer you exciting things, I've no doubt, when they hear about what it is that you're doing. But hold tight to the mission. I think what you're creating is something really unique and very interesting and very necessary. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job.
Right, cool. Thank you. Thanks, Jen, again. And I want to thank all those that listen to this, and you know, use whatever we've shared with you to help you contribute more to people. Tap into your soul and ask yourself again. Rumi said, be as you seem or seem as you be," and that's something that, you know, Jen's life personifies. But also, at the end of the day, what you seek is seeking you, and that's something that we mentioned. So, and that's what will happen. So, this is the last words that I'm going to share, and thank you for listening. And hopefully, we can meet soon. And maybe Jen, I can see you at the workshops or the seminars, and yeah, we can catch up some other time.
That would be lovely. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Good luck all.